and welcome to The Federal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we take a very holistic look at some very major issue which is dominating the headlines. Now, the issue that we are focusing on today has actually been dominating headlines for at least more than 4 decades, the period that I have been in journalism, which is the issue of the alleged misuse by the center and the ruling party of the office of the governor and the lieutenant governor. It has also been the case for the last 10 years, since 2014. This has been a bit paradoxical because while the BJP was in opposition, it was constantly critical of the then central governments, various ones, of misusing the office of the governor and saying that they are going to make amends, make changes in it, but it has not happened. It has been the new opposition which is making similar kind of allegations which the BJP used to at one point. Even now, it is either the issue in Delhi, or it is in West Bengal, or in Tamil Nadu, or in Kerala. At some stage, every state, there is some problem with the governor and the elected state government. Who does one actually talk to if you want to actually discuss and try to get a good handle on it, not taking a particularly sharp, this is correct and this is wrong, that party is wrong, or the other party is wrong. So we turn to Mr. Najeeb Jung, who has, of course, been the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi for a very critical period between 2013 and 2016, when there was a lot of political transition in the capital. He has also been the Vice Chancellor of the Jamia Millia Islamia and also been a career bureaucrat. Welcome to the program, Mr. Najeeb Jung, and thank you very much for agreeing to speak on an issue which is extremely complicated and also very controversial, if I may add. Welcome to the...
Thank you.
Let me start with a recent conference of the governors which was held in Delhi in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, which was addressed both by the President of India and by the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Now, Mr. Modi said that the governors have a role to play to be the effective bridge between the center and the state. The President also said something similar, that for the smooth functioning of democracy, it was crucial for various central agencies to work with better coordination across all states. Despite all these assurances coming from the President and the Prime Minister, there is, many feel, some basis in the widespread sense that the governors continue to act like the arms of the center or the ruling party. Do you also think that way?
Well, number one, Nilanjan, I entirely endorse what the Prime Minister and the Honorable President had said. They have stuck to what's clearly enunciated in the Constitution of India. Having said that, there is no doubt that while they should be an effective bridge, but right now, many governors are exceeding the constitutional brief, I believe. This has happened before. It's not that it has happened now. The usage of Article 356 has happened many times, as you know, prior to 2014. Having said that, we haven't seen this type of, say, accelerated aggression by some governors as we are seeing now. And that causes some concern, because it almost seems as if some have become arms of the government, and that's not at all what the framers of the constitutions had envisaged in 1950. So I think that you're absolutely right, that there is a level of concern amongst everyone on what's happening. Yes.
Now, to understand it a bit, let's start getting into very specific matters. Very recently, the governor of West Bengal gave an interview live to a television channel. Now, you, in your response to that, you had been asked in another interview you had said that this was a highly improper act on part of the governor. I would like to, listen from you and also try to explain to our viewers as to why you consider this particular act to have been a very improper one.
Well, I stay with my statement that I think that Mr. Bose has completely exceeded his brief and what he did was wrong. What is expected of him if he is unhappy with the chief minister or some aspects of her administration, that he's fully empowered to call her in private and counsel her, have a private word with her. And if things are not mended, then he can certainly report the matter to the president, and thereby meaning the home minister and the cabinet. At the end of the day, the governor is the representative of the union government, which is the cabinet led by the prime minister. Now, if he starts giving interviews, then either, and this could be misinterpreted, that he is acting at the behest of the center, or he doesn't understand his constitutional duties. So either which way, what he did was highly improper, and it is unprecedented.
What do you make out of the protracted friction which is there between the Lieutenant Governor in Delhi and the elected government of the Delhi state? The Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Saxena, has not exactly given an interview to a television channel, but just the other day he wrote an opinion article in one of the leading papers of the country, that is the Indian Express, in which he was very critical of what is technically his own government. After all, he's the Lieutenant Governor. So very much like the president, that the government is of the president, similarly in a state, that is of the governor or the Lieutenant Governor. So what do you make out of Mr. Saksena's decision to write an op-ed on the issue of, continuing failure of the government to perform its duties?
Nilanjan, what's happening in Delhi in the past few months is strange, because this seems to be a city under siege. There's a constant battle. Not that there were disagreements earlier. There were disagreements since the AAP government came in 2013-15. But the level of discourse that has emerged now seems to me pretty bizarre. I mean, every day there are clarifications being issued by the Lieutenant Governor's office on something or other. And then there is a counter charge or clarification by ministers of the Aam Aadmi Party. So where is the work happening? And now to come out in the press in that manner is like I said, as in the case of West Bengal, this is very unprecedented. And then today we have a counter in the same newspaper from Minister Bhardwaj, countering whatever the Lieutenant Governor has said, and then, saying what could have been in Delhi and what is not being Delhi. Now, this kind of a charge and counter charge doesn't behove either the Lieutenant Governor or the minister. I mean, they have to sit down and talk. It has to be a closed door meeting, and they have to resolve issues. They may not be getting along on many issues, fine. But Delhi government, Delhi administration, and the state of Delhi cannot be dragged in public domain among charges and counter charges almost on a daily basis.
You were the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi at a very critical period of time. You assumed the office when Mrs. Sheila Dikshit from the Congress party was still the Chief Minister. Then there were elections in the month of November, December 2013, which yielded a hung assembly. Eventually, the Aam Aadmi Party formed a government with the support of the Congress party. For 49 days, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal was the Chief Minister. It was a very turbulent period in which there were, at least on a couple of issues, there were differences of opinion between your office and the office of the Chief Minister. February 2015, Mr. Kejriwal becomes the Chief Minister once again with a brutal 67 out of 70 seats, that kind of majority, completely unprecedented.
I think it was 63. I think it was 63. It's 67 now.
67 in 2015. Only 3 seats were won by the BJP. I remember because one of the 3 unfortunate leaders from the Aam Aadmi Party who lost was known to me. So he, we really had a long conversation after that, trying to provide him some kind of, to just assure him.
To get all of them, to get all the 70 would have been really remarkable.
Yes, and mind you, this was an election in which there were no allegations of any rigging. So all the way it becomes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There has never been a rigging in Delhi.
So within the limitations, that of laws which bind you possibly even now, I would like you to share some of the, your experiences of having worked with a chief minister who definitely had a different perspective from what his office had, the powers it had from what it actually has.
Nilanjan, I am always chary of sharing many things in public that had happened. But what I can say, and I can say that in public again and again, that yes, there was a difference in appreciation. Mr. Kejriwal was young and energetic and enthusiastic, and therefore a man in a hurry. And with that kind of hurry, he was almost bound to flout rules and regulations. He didn't understand that we work as per conventions, that sometimes things can be slow, but they can be speeded up through dialogue, that he was not willing to understand that at that stage. And so there were many, many disagreements. We tried to sort them out as much as possible. Some were sorted out, but he had major disagreements even then with the bureaucracy. He was in conflict with his own bureaucracy. Now, those guys are the people who report to him. And if you can't get along with them, then your government will not function. He had major disagreements with the police administration. So, if your own bureaucrats are not working for you and the police doesn't listen to you and you are in such a hurry that you are in conflict with the office of the lieutenant governor, then administration will suffer. And it is a pity. I think that it did suffer in many things. Having said that, like I said, I respect Mr. Kejriwal for his energy. I have a lot of regard for him, for the enthusiasm that he had to do good for Delhi. Now, whether that happened adequately or not is for the public to judge. But they have voted for him. They voted enthusiastically for him. He got 63 seats again. And therefore, obviously, what he did was appreciated by the public of Delhi. And there is, like you said, or some people say that there is traction that the office of the lieutenant governor has been an impediment to the working of the Aam Aadmi Party. That's an impression which I can do little to redress. But I do believe that, and I'm sure of my time, that there was nothing done to put an impediment to his working.
Okay. Mr. Kejriwal was not the only chief minister with who you worked. You also worked with Sheila Dikshit, as I was talking earlier. You also would have had disagreements with Sheila Dikshit. Being a veteran politician, she would have had a certain way of looking at things. And she also would have been aware about the limitations which the Chief Minister of Delhi has as compared to the other Chief Ministers of other states. How was that experience and how was it different from working with Mr. Kejriwal?
Working with Mrs. Dikshit was a pleasure. She knew the rules, she knew the conventions, she knew the constitution, and she respected the constitution. Of course, there were disagreements, and we had come to a wonderful working arrangement that every Thursday at 11 o'clock, she would drop in for a coffee. She would be bang on time. I would keep no appointments at that time. And we would sit, and if there were issues that I had kept back, I would talk to them, and she would say yes, no, whatever, and we would have an agreement, disagreement. There are things which I would agree to, and there were many things which I would not agree to. But there was never an issue that was taken amiss, or that she would leave in a huff or in an anger. And therefore, I think that looking back in life, I learned a lot from the way that she behaved and the way that she has respected the Constitution and its values. And therefore, the experience of, to answer your question, the experience of working with Mrs. Dikshit was really a pleasurable experience. And I learned a lot.
You know, there's another matter which often gets flagged. That is the President of India and the governors and also the Lieutenant Governor, having a different oath. When they assume office, they take a different oath in which safeguarding Constitution is not the only responsibility they are charged with, but also to work for the welfare of the people. This was a matter which was also pointed out by Mr. Amit Shah in his speech in the Conference of Governors, which I was referring to previously, that this commitment that they make, that they will work for the welfare of the people, gives them probably an opportunity to act as monitors of the elected government. How do you look at this entire issue and the oath giving the responsibility of working for the welfare of the people and how it can be interpreted? I know that this is actually a very nuanced interpretation of the Constitution, but I would like to listen to you on this matter.
So, Nilanjan, with great respect and due regards for what Mr. Shah would normally say, I beg to differ on this aspect. Working for the people does not mean going beyond what is expected of you. If it was so, then it creates a chaotic condition, because then you would interfere with the working of the Chief Minister and his government. The Chief Minister has been elected by the people on a manifesto that he or she have presented to the people of his state. And the governor cannot monitor that manifesto, nor can the governor say that I want a report on, say, how many wells you have dug, or how much agricultural fertilizer you have distributed, or how much revenue collection you have had. That's not his job. Of course, that's welfare of the people. So will we take that he can sit as a monitor? No. I think that the governor, as you said in the beginning of this interview, is a path between the state and the union government. And that path has certain conventions and laid down rules, and they must be adhered to. Otherwise, as we are seeing today, we will end up in needless aggression, which impacts not only the administration, it impacts the morale of the people of the state. And it creates a bad impression overseas about India, that here we seem to be at constant war with ourselves, which is not true.
Being at loggerheads with, it gives a very bad impression to the outside world that the governor and an elected leader, they cannot work together. It always appears that the government which is elected at the center is not allowing those that are elected in the states to function as they wish to under the constitutional, the norms which are there. Now, the issue, there's been one issue which has actually been constantly in headlines. It has been in headlines prior to 2014 also, that is of the governors sitting on bills which have been duly passed by the State Assembly. Supreme Court has also seized of this matter. It had come up with a previous judgment last year, and even subsequent to that, there have been further developments on it, and more petitions of the Kerala and West Bengal government are now being listed, to be heard by the Supreme Court. Now, this practice of withholding the bills by the governor, what does it reveal? This is something that very ironically has been faced even by Mr. Modi when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat. I remember that he used to, in various meetings of the National Integration Council, he would flag these issues as to how the state government's powers were being obstructed by the center through the office of the governor.
Yes, Mr. Modi took it up that time. He also took up the question of finances under the Planning Commission. He felt that state governments were being unfairly treated. Now, how can the governor reserve, in what conditions can a governor reserve a bill? As far as my understanding of the Constitution goes, there are three provisions to this. A, if the bill endangers the functioning of the high courts. That's very significant. Not many people know that. So can a bill endanger the high court itself? That's one. Then, is the bill against the provisions of the Constitution itself? That's second. And third, that any of the content of the bill is a danger to the country. These are the three issues that you can withhold bills. I don't read the details, but from what I see in the newspapers, none of the bills that have been withheld have carried any of these or have violated any of these.
Right.
So it's obvious that the governors are going beyond what the Constitution. Now the governor can withhold the bill till it dies a natural death. After all, it has a period and it will die a natural death. The governor can send back the bill to the houses of legislature, but the houses, if they approve it, then he has to approve them. It's exactly what happens here. And thirdly, and thirdly, that he can, what is called a pocket, that he can, what shall I say, he can reserve it for the consent of the president. That's a very useful tool that governors often use, because when it goes to the office of the president, it rarely comes back. It's a pity, but it's a very useful tool to be used. So all this that is happening is needless controversy. I mean, what I have said, the Supreme Court pulled up Governor Ravi in Tamil Nadu.
That's right.
The Supreme Court or the High Court, I don't remember which one, has actually advised the governor of Kerala on interfering with the appointment of chancellors.
Right.
Now, the life of me, I can't understand what a governor has to do with the chancellor of a university. These are state universities. The state government will post a chancellor. We have to respect the wisdom of the elected government that they will choose a chancellor that is beneficial to the university. Otherwise, you have to say that I don't respect this government. If you don't respect your chief minister, if you don't respect his judgment, then he should be sacked. But so long as the chief minister is there and is appointing chancellors and vice chancellors, then that is completely his prerogative. So coming to your question, I think that in the excitement of what's happening around them, the governors are far exceeding their brief, and unfortunately, it happens only in states where the BJP is in power, is in opposition. After all, it's not happening in Uttar Pradesh. That's not happening in Madhya Pradesh. No bills are withheld in Uttarakhand. No bills are withheld in Rajasthan. So is something wrong only with the chief ministers of states where the opposition is in command? That's not correct.
Certainly is not correct. One of the reasons, which has actually been talked about for a long time is the political affiliation of the person who is appointed as governor or the lieutenant governor. There has also been this new trend, which had actually not been there prior to 2014, of retired Supreme Court judges being appointed as governors. Now, at one level is the political alignment of the governor, that they are all former politicians, or in fact, they held a political position and just resigned that and assumed the office of the governor. And on the other side, you have retired judges being appointed as governors, which many have said, can actually, lead to a situation where sitting judges, when they're deliberating on very crucial matters, would be aware that if I can come up with a quote unquote a favorable judgment, I might get a post-retirement, gubernatorial position. Do you think that what can be done, to really put it down?
Nilanjan, number one, the answer to the question lies within the question itself, that it is obviously incorrect. Now, if I go back to parliamentary debates, I remember Mr. Jetley, and he was a fabulous parliamentarian. I've had really the honor of working with him. He has in Parliament said that post-retirement jobs should not be made available to these people because it comes with an attraction of something later. So therefore, let's be very, very clear, with due respect to all the honorable judges, that it really is unbecoming of a judge of the Supreme Court or the High Court to accept a post like this from the government.
Right. Before I move on to another subject on which I wish to pick your brains, that is the recently introduced Waqf Bill, which has been now sent to the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Before that, I want to ask you one final question regarding the governor and the LG. You have been the LG of Delhi. Obviously, the statehood of Delhi has severe constraints. The elected representative feels, almost every chief minister has, from 1992 onwards, have said, want greater powers. Police, for instance, and on various other matters, wanting more power. Do you think it is time to really revisit the constitutional framework of governance in Delhi?
Delhi became, in 1991, I think, the first lieutenant governor was Jha Sahab, Mr. A.N. Shah. I think he became a lieutenant governor in 1969, something like that, 68 or 69. And then we have had a succession of chief ministers till finally the assembly came in the 90s. And Delhi has had very powerful and charismatic chief ministers, Mr. Madan Lal Khurana, with very strong roots in Delhi.
After that, to law.
Yeah. Then Mrs. Dikshit, and these guys have had a multiplicity of lieutenant governors.
Yeah, Sushma Swaraj for a few months, which I just...
Yeah. And there's been a multiplicity of governors, but the system worked. What the system didn't envisage was there could be a chief minister like Mr. Kejriwal. Okay. It went beyond the better minds of the framers of the lieutenant governor's office that they would have at some point of time a chief minister who would be different. Now, since that has happened, and since it has happened for the last 10 years, then perhaps it is time to sit back and think that the state must cater to different chief ministers also. Now, okay. I think it requires better minds than yours and mine to sit back, and maybe Parliament and judges and former lieutenant governors should sit together in the form of a committee, look at all the pros and cons of having this municipality, the NDMC being separate, the Delhi police being under the LG, the land being under the LG, but other subjects being with the chief minister. However, actually under the LG, because the LG acts under the aid and advice of the chief minister, and he can actually overrule what the Chief Minister is saying. So in the context of what is happening and the mess that we see around us currently of non-governance, I think it's time that we took a relook.
Okay. Taking a relook is actually very important. Now, let me move on to the issue of the Waqf Bill. When it was tabled during the last recently concluded budget session of Parliament, it really caught everybody by surprise. We were not really, as journalists, not expecting the government to introduce something which was fairly contentious like that. Now, you have argued in an article which you have written, that the mismanagement of the Waqf Board, which you have pointed out, which almost there is a kind of a consensus on that there is need for much improvement. But this is used as a ruse to interfere, with the community's rights to conduct their own affairs and their own institutions, manage their own efforts. I'd like to, hear from you that at a very fundamental level, what do you find problematic with this bill?
First, Nilanjan, let's understand what is a Waqf. Now, the Waqf is something not new. It is as old as the advent of Islam. These were trusts. You have the diaries of Ibn Battuta traveling and finding trusts in Turkey. Now, the Waqf means is it's Muslim property. It doesn't belong to anybody else.
Right.
So the Muslims make a trust in the name of God.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a religious trust. However, there can be conditions to the trust. The conditions can be that it is totally for charity, or it can be partially for charity, and also partly for funding one's family, etc. Now, suddenly, the Waqf has had many amendments over time. The major amendment, as you know, came in 1913 when the British government was there. But in 1995, the erstwhile government sat, and with the parliamentarians, they had a fresh look and removed a lot of weaknesses that the old act has, and made offenses under the old Waqf Act actually punishable by jail. So there was a genuine consensus because Muslim Samaj, as we say, was consulted widely in 1995, and that bill came into force, that act came into force. Okay. Now suddenly we find a new act or new bill being introduced. No wider consultations were held with the Samaj. So there are clerics. There is the Jamaat-e-Islami, there's the Jamaat-ul-Ulama-e-Hind, there is Farangi Mahal, there are trusts in Hyderabad, etc., etc. No one is consulted. So suddenly, from the wisdom of the Law Ministry, this is put forth before Parliament, and it is full of holes. Holes meaning, you say that this board. The first fundamental objection, let me put it, it will also have this board will also have non-Muslims in it. So tomorrow, I want to put Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay in the body of the Church of North India.
That will not be permitted.
Correct. Is it correct? It is not correct. Or Mr. Mukhopadhyay will say that I will put Mr. Jung as a trustee in the Tirupati Trust. What does Mr. Jung know of the puja systems? What does Mr. Jung know of Tirupati? How are his inclinations, even if he's a very secular person? What are his genuine interests in running a temple trust? Now you want to put non-Muslims in it. So it doesn't make sense. You go on, and they said, let's have women in the Waqf board. Nobody has read the act. There is no embargo on women being on the Waqf boards.
Women can be, and I think they are members in some of these states.
I am not sure if they are. Women are mutaballis, I know. Those are people in charge of Waqf. But what I'm saying is that you want to add, it's fair enough. There's no problem. But now you want to have a uniform Waqf board, which will include the Sunni Waqf boards, the Shia Waqf board, the Bohras, the Ahmadiyyas, etc. Okay. The Shias have a separate Waqf board. And I'm sure because they are smaller in number, they function better than the Sunni Waqf boards. The Bohras are a very elite community. They are minuscule in number like the Parsis. They are extremely well-to-do. They are educated, and they have a religious guru in the Sayyidna. Do they even want to be part of this huge Sunni Shia conglomerate which will gobble them up? So what we have done is we have made a bill without consulting the community, which is full of loopholes, or at least should be amended. But the problem, they don't want to cure the nub of the problem.
Yes.
And the problem basically is the corruption in the Waqf boards. So what is happening? What's the Muslims saying? The Muslims are saying that we agree there's corruption. But in this whole attempt to create an act, you want to take away lands that belong to Muslims. Why does this suspicion come? The suspicion comes because the Muslims are now chary and wary of this government. They are wary of the intent of the government. Until the government doesn't come out in the open and clear up the mess, you can't bully a community of 25 crores into agreeing something that hits at the belly of their religious belief. They will not succeed in this. They will only create problem. The crux of the problem really here is the constitution of the Waqf boards. The Waqf boards and the members are selected by state governments.
Right.
It's not done by outsiders. It is not done by the community.
Right.
Who are the members? These could be ex-parliamentarians. These could be ex-MLAs. Mostly they are these people who the government thinks are important for them. They are either ideologically in tune with you, or you want to do them a favor.
Right.
There is no due diligence done on their competence, on their integrity, and therefore the dishonesty and corruption in the Waqf boards is well known. It is well known in the community. It is well known outside. The complaints that you are hearing of land being misused and shops being illegally rented out are all correct.
Okay.
So the idea should be not to bring in a great new amended act, but the idea should be to clean up the Waqf boards.
Right.
So there should be a mechanism of selecting the right person. You see, this has to be done in the context of religion, unfortunately, because it is Muslim property.
Right.
And as if you ask a good Muslim, he will say that Waqf is the property of Allah.
That's right.
Therefore, you have to have faith in the tenets of Islam, and you should at least be a moral person.
Right.
If you start selecting political people who have their own agendas and have alignments with the political parties, you are making mistakes, and therefore you are in the mess that you are in. Now, that has not been addressed. There are some very good points in this amendment, by the way. I mean, they say have a data bank for the land that is with the Waqf.
Should be there.
To have a portal with data bank, but the government says complete this data in 6 months. There are lakhs and lakhs of Waqf properties in India. It will take years. I mean, it's the example of Aadhaar that it took us years to complete this Aadhaar exercise.
Right.
So it's a simple idea to have a portal, but give them time. Secondly, in their excitement, they say, people survey Waqf properties. These are, again, officers of the rank of deputy secretary, etc., in state governments. These are competent people. Suddenly, they've woken up to say collectors will be the surveyors. There'll be no survey, collector. Now, the collector is the busiest person in the world. Let me tell you, I'm not talking of India. Because right from census to law and order to development to irrigation, the fellow is doing everything. And having been a collector for 10 years, I can tell you that you can work your back off, but you can't do everything. And now to dump him with this, with a community which is difficult to handle as it is because they're sensitive to their properties, the collector cannot do it. So somebody has to think. I mean, I would really advise the JPC, and I'm very glad I've heard that the JPC is now calling involved persons, concerned persons. They are calling in these so-called Jamaats and individuals and ex-MPs and MLAs and intellectuals and teachers to talk to them. That's a
Right.
one step. And if they do so, then no one is adverse to amendments. Everything can be improved with time. But it must be done with good intent and taking the community into confidence. If you tell the Muslims that we don't have confidence in you, that we are the people who will tell you what is right for you, then it's not going to work.
Well, if amendment that is critically required at this moment, if it is done very hastily, obviously it will be a very shoddy job. I just hope that the JPC tells the government that we require wider consultation, and that the deadline which has been set by the government, that is the first day of the winter session of Parliament, it is not possible to be able to complete this task, and it requires a greater and further extension of the JPC. That would be the most prudent decision, I think, on part of the government as well as for the JPC to recommend. Well, thank you, Mr. Najeeb Jung, for spending a lot of time with us, trying to explain very carefully and very taking us through the exact processes of both the issue of governor and the lieutenant governors, and how they are ending up having creating all kinds of problems for the elected state governments, and also on this issue of the Waqf Bill, which is very critical for the Muslim community and for the social fabric of India. Thank you very much for joining us on this program.